we are going to be discussing Civil Site Design version 26.2 today. We're going to go through sort of the key parts of that release. The first one is really just a compatibility overview. We released it very, very sort of late December. In fact, you could almost consider it an early Christmas present for those of you that were still working through Christmas. And the overall goal of this was to ensure compatibility with BricsCAD 26, but also include some improvements and obviously the general day-to-day fixes. If you are interested in looking in more detail at this release, particularly the minutiae of sort of fixes, improvements, known issues, etc., please obviously head to our release notes, which are available on our website. And if you are interested in downloading the correct version of Civil Site Design, it's not often we normally have to sort of talk about which version you would download, but the release certainly that happened in version 26 and the releases going forward are sort of subject to major sort of development framework sort of code changes that are happening, I guess sort of globally, but actually impacting the platforms that we operate on top of. So just a quick summary for you of what this table is all about. If you are operating Civil 3D 2022 to 2024 AutoCAD the same, any future releases of Civil Site Design will only include critical bug fixes only. They will not be subject to any sort of minor bug fixes, shall we say, and minor improvements or any improvements at all. So anything you see today will only be available on 25 of those platforms and 26. Interestingly, 27, there's another code change, .NET 10, which makes it even more interesting for us as a software developer. But we'll talk to you about that when 27 is released. But they are the main things. So anything you're seeing today is only found within really the 25 and 26 versions of your particular platform. Just a notable mention for BricsCAD users, because this is very important. And unfortunately, BricsCAD doesn't support the .dwg and .dxf import and export that we have within Civil Site Design. Which unfortunately means that there are a number of different features and tools which are currently not available. I'm not going to talk to the detail of this. If you want to watch the recording back, just to double check what is available to you as a BricsCAD 26 user, you can also get this information on the release notes, which is what I mentioned on the previous slide. So jumping into the Civil Site Design, and I put 26 at the top, so this is a great start. 26.0, it should be 26.2 May release features. Model Review is the big one. So Model Review is a standalone, downloadable free viewer of files that are directly taken out from Model Viewer. And we used to have something called Model Viewer Standalone back in the day, which enabled you to export all the way up to, I think it was Civil Site Design version 24. You could export an MVS file, and that would let you import a file into what we call Model Viewer Standalone or Model Viewer Design Review, I think as it was called. Anyway, we've got a new version, and this allows for you to take a little bit more control around the visualization. You can actually undertake measurements, markups, and you can also run some exports in there for collaboration. So I'll talk to that first cab off the rank once we actually look at the actual live demonstration. Second major feature we're going to be talking about is auto create grading has been added in to essentially just create batch grading strings using layers or picked polylines. Staggeringly quick, and as far as efficiency goes, as you'll see, we're going to create, getting on for nearly 80 grading strings with this particular feature. And obviously, I'll be talking you through how it operates at the same time. Quick section. I've actually had some feedback from some customers on this already, so I probably should have done a poll here as to who's actually downloaded and installed 26.2, because just with being so close to Christmas and then school holidays, my kids only went back this week. A lot of people won't have even gotten onto this release, but some people have, and the feedback on quick section has been, yeah, absolute gold for users being able to cut sections through their job just simply by drawing a polyline. Then the last sort of major feature I'm going to be showing today is the high-low points. This will basically produce Civil Site Design COGO points at the low points of your models, or the line work or the strings on your models. Identify those low points for you, and then depending on what tolerance you put in, it will then identify them with a little COGO point, as you can see here. So again, we're going to talk through that and show you how that runs in that live demonstration. Just a couple of sort of notable mentions, just two. There are lots of other little bits and pieces that I wanted to mention, but again, they're in the release notes. So have a look through those and digest that as you need. Project storage, one of the questions has come back from users about, well, actually, we'd like to have it defaulting on for our teams and ensure that anybody that uses Civil Site Design always defaults to project storage. I had a customer last week who is working directly off OneDrive. Okay, and the first thing we're going to tell them to do is adopt project storage because they're going to be operating with drawings directly on cloud storage, with the data folder also directly on cloud storage, which quite frankly is a big no-no in respect of processing and speed. Project storage is what we'd recommend that they adopt. This option here allows you to create a file, a notepad file, and that notepad file lives in your Common 10. You can actually create this yourself, as I've done here. I'm reliably informed by my colleague Shane, there's actually a blog or knowledge base article on this. And if I can get hold of it at the end, or if there's a way that we can get it to you through the medium of this webinar, I'll get you that link. But this is pretty simple. Creating a text file with this name, putting this piece of text in here with true, depositing it into your Common 10. And then when you start any new project, you'll find that this little tick box is turned on. Again, another notable mention, there's a little drape surfaces tool, drape objects tool, which is quite smart. So if you do find yourself, particularly more so, less so for the Civil 3D users, I would say this is more for the CAD users. This is quite a handy little tool. So you can go ahead and pick all sorts of different objects and have those draped onto a surface. I've just given you a little highlight as to where you can find that on Toolspace. Not something I'm going to talk about today, but just worth noting that it is there. Okay, there are, as I said, there are a couple of other, we're looking at language translation now. There's carbon calculation that's going on through the section volumes. All of those things are kind of discussed in the release notes, but not time to be covering them off today. Okie dokie. Well, we're going to jump in with looking at model review. Now, if you refer back to the first slide, the downloads link, in fact, if I could probably bring it up, let me just do this. I'll bring it off to one side. I probably should have done this really. Show you where it lives. So if you head to your web browser, pop in download.civilsurveyapplications.com, you can actually get hold of all the correct versions of Civil Site Design. This is what it looks like. So it's clear we're sort of drawing a line in the sand between the 2024 versions and earlier. Up, and then we've got the 25 and later versions up here, depending on what it is you're after. And then with regards to model review, you can actually download it here. Okay. When you've downloaded model review, I'm going to close my web browser. The first thing you would do is import a file which it can read. And obviously for most of you, you won't have one. So I'm going to show you how to access and create yourself a model review file. So I'm going to fire up model viewer inside Civil Site Design. Now, this is not the model I'm going to be exporting, okay? So you're probably going to see something very similar to what you've been seeing in our graphics, which is a delightful roundabout with a car and some other bits and pieces. This is quite ordinary, so I won't be exporting. The aim of this is that it'll actually export nearly everything you put into this view. So if you put, for example, site distance analysis, you put objects, line marking, you'll be able to export this and it will come out at the other end. Now, obviously, this is quite an ordinary model, but essentially, this is what it will be generating for me, and I'll be able to open up in model review. So I'd be going to Outputs, Export, and you'll know you're on 26.2 because you'll see, in fact, it might even be earlier than that we've sort of had it in the background. You'll see .mvr. Okay, so you can export your file. .mvr, you can see I've already got one sitting on my desktop, good to go. And you can export it. The idea of this is that anybody can download this viewer. Doesn't require a license. Anybody can download the viewer. You as a team can all have it installed. And if you want to review the project. So this is model review. And for those of you that have used model viewer, it's incredibly simple and straightforward to operate. I'm not going to spend heaps of time in here because it is so intuitive. I'm going to go to open, head to desktop, and open up this project. So this is quite a smart, neat little project that was created with Civil Site Design in model viewer, and we've got a few bits and pieces going on in here. We've got some models, some strings, we've got some line work, we've got extrusions, and we have a vehicle. So navigation-wise, it's the same as you've used in model viewer. Simply using your mouse to orbit, scroll in and out, and left button press to give yourself that pan. In regards to what's going on in this environment, what you can do, really, all of the control is found at the top here. Okay. One of the visual styles I'm going to be using for the majority of this is rendered with edges. Again, very similar to what we have in model viewer, mostly because of the measurement tool. The measurement tool has got some snapping and it anchors onto triangles. So it kind of makes sense that I show those triangles to you, even though it's not quite as visually appealing, but it does help me see what's going on in this view. In regards to just some basic information here, you can set the coloring of the background and do a little bit of a reset. Also find out whether or not you're on the latest version. If you do find yourself wanting to download something and install, you can just check what version you're on. The process of using this is quite simple. We have what's called an objects list or an object tree. And I'm going to just move this over to one side. The intent of this is to really highlight to you all the objects that you have available within the project, and you can then turn on and off the visibility of those objects. So with regards to design surface, base surface, model strings. So your design surface is what you've picked in model viewer. Okay. When you export this, you've normally got a primary design and then you've got a base surface. This is your primary design and this is your base surface. So this is obviously quite logical, turning that on and off. The design surface is actually broken down into pavement parts. So you can actually go through this and turn on and off individual pieces rather than necessarily having to turn off the complete string, so to speak. When it comes down to models, however, you can then turn on and off individual strings. So when it comes to models, what we're doing is talking about the line work. So if we head to, say, for example, the roundabout here, I can very quickly turn on and off, and you probably just see it happening on this roundabout as I'm doing that, turn on and off the line work specifically for the roundabout, but maybe we want the line work being displayed for other parts of the project. Now, at any point you find yourself wanting to turn on and off content quickly, you simply go to sort of the main parent, model strings, turn off, turn on, and everything is going to come back on again for you. We've got the same underneath here for, in fact, if we just make this a little bit smaller, just for extrusions and line work. And this other, which happens to be a lovely car, again, turning this on and off. Now, the object tree is great because it highlights to me everything that's in the drawing and I can see what I can turn on and off as I'm working through here. But also we've got what we call selections. So if you find yourself in this window up here, which I'm going to, you've got a selection tool. And as you can see there, select objects by dragging the rectangle. I can use the select. You can actually pick only one at a time, mind you. It's a singular pick, but you can actually pick an object. Okay. This button here then hides that selected object. As you can see there, that's now been turned off. So it's a quick way of turning content on and off. However, as the tooltip sort of alludes to, if I just move my mouse up there, you can see select by dragging a rectangle. So if I decide I want to turn off the display of this roundabout, which will be, in fact, let's go for one of these islands, we can run the select, drag over the roundabout, and then I simply go hide. And that object is then being turned off from the display. And don't forget that's model line work as well that's being turned off. And again, if I don't want this piece of line work being displayed, I can turn that off. Whoops, let's try that again. And turn off the display. Now, in regards to what else you can do in here, we've got a couple of other tabs at the top. Again, it's so intuitive. I'm not going to spend too much time in here, but we can actually start measuring distances. So if I decide I want to check the sort of apron width here that I've got going on for the outer annulus, I can click on add. I'm going to use vertex. I'm reliably informed by our wonderful development team that when you are within about 25 pixels of the end of a triangle, it will actually anchor on and snap. It's like a magnet. As you can see, it's done there. I'm going to left click. I'm not dragging, by the way. I'm just simply releasing my left click, clicking to the other end, and I've got myself a nice little distance being applied there. The thing about these distances, once you press escape, or these measurements, sorry, if you left click on that object and you don't want to see it anymore, hit delete. It's gone. Okay, so I bang my table there to reinforce that. Going to go add again. Maybe I want to go edge of triangle. Go towards the edge, click towards the edge, and that won't guarantee to be snapping on the edge. Look, I probably haven't picked the best example there, but the intention is to show you what the point of the vertex and the edge actually do. In regards to moving these measurements, if I just press escape, if I left click, we're on gizmo move even. If I left click on the vertex here, and I can then just drag using what we call the gizmo. If I press escape, go up to the top, free move, left click on the measurement, drag. Let's try that again. There we go. I can move it around. So you can add multiple of these into the drawing and they stay there. And I'll talk about how you keep everything in this because it's not just a case of everything gets automatically saved. I will cover that right at the very end. We're going to head to markup. Markup is very, very simple as well. Markup is adding labels or freehand annotation. So if I click on add label, maybe I'll click inside this roundabout. I can say roundabout option 1. I can then decide to define how that label will look, save that as a style if you want them sort of consistent. I might just drop the line height here, which is the height of the flag, down to about 2. It's my personal preference here. Click confirm. If I left click on that, press escape a couple of times just to make sure you've got no other command running, I can then drag that label around. Then in a position, if I don't want that label anymore, to hit delete. It's gone. Okay, but you can add multiple. The last thing with regards to annotation is adding the ink. So if you find yourself just wanting to mark something up and highlight something to somebody, let's just assume that this is maybe a problem over here. We'll just use the pen. Start the command add ink, click a color, click OK, and it's basically freehand markup, which you can see there. It's completely sort of draping itself on the surface for somebody else to see. You could obviously then put a label inside that to maybe highlight what it is that you want to discuss. Again, pressing escape, left click, and then hit delete to remove if you want to. At any point, you can obviously use the global on-off tools in respect of all of these, as you can see, measurement and markup. When we're on output, if you decide that you want to keep everything that you've put in here, you need to run save MVR. You can overwrite the file you are currently working in, which in this case would be roundabout project.mvr. If you want to create a copy and have the original stay as it was when we open it, obviously you can save it as something else if you want to. If you want to export anything up to 2K and 4K in resolution from a screenshot, you can run export image and have the image taken out of this. So that really concludes, it's a very brief and quick summary, but I think once you begin to open up Model Review and have a bit of a play, it's an incredibly intuitive little tool, excellent way of being able to share design models. And I expect it will get many of you trying to improve your model viewer outputs and your materials and bits and pieces, trying to make those models look absolutely schmick before sending them on to somebody else. But even for things like public consultation and whatnot, and sharing this with somebody who has no CAD platform whatsoever, this is a great option. I will pause it there. And Shane, just think I've deliberately closed the Q&A because I find myself sort of like a moth to a light, getting sort of attracted to it. But Shane, is there anything that you want to sort of mention? I'll shut it down.
There are a couple of questions, but mainly about version, which I'll just answer directly. Everybody was stunned and awed with what you showed with Model Review.
Yeah, great.
Jonathan, I will add just one small thing. If you are selecting objects individually, if you do hold down the control button, you should be able to pick multiples.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to start firing it up then. I'll leave it. Yeah, but control for multiples. Thank you. Lovely. All righty. Well, look, we'll move on to the second sort of major feature, which is batch grading. Now, this tool is only found in Toolspace. Okay, so at the moment, I expect on 27, there'll be in the roadside grading panel here, you'll find that batch or auto create grading will sit in there. As things stand, it lives under grading strings on the grading strings header, auto create grading. So the intention is, and this sort of came out with discussion with people that were putting together sort of pads for wind farms and that kind of thing, where there are, 100, 200 different pads that have got to be designed. And obviously it's fairly tedious doing that. It could be that you are looking at lots in this example and you're wanting to create all of these individual pads for these lots separately. And I don't mean the yellow line in the center here. I actually mean the actual external boundary. It could be that you're looking to create all of those. This tool is designed to speed up that whole process and make it far more efficient. By the way, if you are looking to use this tool for example, these boundaries, obviously they would need to be polylines, which these are not, but you would also need to make sure that you have some kind of small offset because you do not want to have grading strings on top of grading strings at exactly the same location when you come to do your modeling later on. So it's important that you have a very small offset. We're going to be using the tool on these sort of building outlines just as an example. They work quite neatly and they tie in quite neatly to the quick section that we're going to be talking about very, very shortly afterwards. So let's just jump in. Grading strings, auto create grading. I've deliberately, by the way, I've left this polyline is going to be here for the quick section, but I've deliberately left it in because I don't want to include it as part of this process. I've got a layer here called CSD pads. I'm going to click add layer. All this will do is it will present me with all polylines, closed or not, within that particular layer. So I'm just double clicking on these columns to make them full. There we go. So there's a couple of things just to spot at the top here. This one is not closed. Okay. So from my perspective, I'm thinking, well, why is it not closed? It should be. Now, if I just click onto each row, we actually zoom to the polyline. So this polyline, great bit of layer control here, is not on the right layer. I've drawn it for quick section, but I've left it in here. Obviously, that is not going to be used for the purposes of batch grading. So what we can do is underneath go remove. Okay, and that's removed from this particular process. You can manually pick them back again though. You can pick all of it manually, quite frankly. But what it does mean is that it saves a bit of time if you've got good layer control. The other one here is to note that there is an existing grading string already assigned to that polyline. And I'll talk about the option at the end, which will basically enable us to continue with the process of building a grading string on that polyline or tell it to skip. But it is already highlighting, but I can sort of note that for the moment and move on. Now, if you've used the grading string form before, everything really from this point onwards is fairly similar. It's just got some extra bells and whistles. Firstly, the naming, you're going to be naming obviously multiple polylines, 74 or potentially 73 at this particular point. You may decide that they're all going to be named in a particular way. Now, I'm going to put a space just after the prefix. This preview, as you probably just saw there, actually updates. It shows me how my naming convention will look. I can put a suffix, change the start number. By the way, if you've got grading strings with the same number, which I've deliberately done, I've got 046 there. That is already created. 046 is going to be somewhere else in the job, but you will not get a duplicate. Okay. We can obviously define how those pad numbers are then being set up with regards to the number of zeros, prefixing that number, which can be nice and helpful if you've got, up to 100, maybe even 1,000 pads. Grading settings, all straightforward. This is going to be picking my natural surface, picking a template. The only downside, I guess, if you're using this for the first time is knowing which side your grading strings are directed, because obviously I'm assuming at this point, but I know all my grading strings are in the correct direction, which in my case will be clockwise, for this batter to be on the left-hand side, which means it's going to be on the outside. So there is no recourse within this form to say, oh, whoops, I've changed my mind. You will have to go in and edit them individually, or failing that, you delete them all, go and change your polylines in the direction. So this is something you would need to know. Spacings wise, I'm actually going to set this to, let's just say 20. The reason for this is because I don't really want sampling every 1 meter on 74 grading strings straight off the bat. We'll talk about the grading string manager in a second, which helps us sort of improve the processing side of things. But what this will do is it will give me spacing at 20, which you can probably see on maybe a few of these. I'll get some samples in the middle, but it'll only pick up the vertices. Okay, it will go vertex, look for something at 20, can't find it, vertex, 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 which is much neater. I'll use the mitered corner method. The corner angle increment on grading strings is every 5 degrees on a corner which is not supported with an arc, i.e. tangent, tangent. The software will every 5 degrees transfer the last section and whip it around the corner for you and create a nice mitered corner solution. Some cool stuff in here for the initial height, actually. Fixed height, you could set them all to be the same level, but you also have some extra bells and whistles. So in here, we're able to drape at the start point of that polyline. Obviously, if they're closed, the start and the end are going to be the same. The centroid, it will drape to what it believes. Don't ask me how this works, but basically it somehow calculates the center point of this polyline, wherever that may be, determines the level from your target surface, which is the NS, and then basically uses that for the centroid. Drape at the lowest, drape at the highest, and then obviously drape the average as it's going around this particular polyline. Level difference from centroid is actually to do with if you've got two surfaces, it will actually drape it to the level difference of those two surfaces. Yet to work out the sort of the main reason you would use that. So if you've got a surface that's 1 meter lower than the other, level difference from centroid will basically set that to be 1 meter, which on this job obviously wouldn't work. But some nice little touches in here. I'm going to be using drape at centroid, which is sort of really what we're looking for is the average. Use the natural surface. So I take it back. I said there a minute ago that you could use the target surface. You can actually pick one, and then you can obviously adjust that with a height offset. Now, I would strongly recommend, I mean, look, this is my personal preference, not creating a surface of every single grading string if you are going to incorporate these grading strings later on into a model builder model, because ultimately they're going to get modeled there anyway. So if you're creating surfaces of absolutely everything, but you don't actually need that surface until it's been combined with something else, just really have a think about whether or not you need it. You can always independently edit these grading strings later on and say you do want a surface. One comment about skip means that if there is a grading string already on this polyline, do not put another grading string on there. Interestingly, not many people probably realize this, but I could actually create another grading string on that polyline. The polyline is essentially an alignment. So the alignment itself, or the polyline, can technically store that grading string and potentially another one. I wouldn't normally ever recommend anybody ever does that, but it does actually work. But in this case, obviously, what I don't want is to have a replica grading string created on something I've already created. So absolutely skip any polylines that have got grading strings applied on them. We're going to run create grading strings. There's a nice little fancy graphic that sort of goes along the bottom here so you can actually see your progress, which is quite smart. That will then work its magic and go ahead and apply all of those templates, looking at that average level of the centroid or the level at the centroid, and then go ahead and create them. Again, there is no order. So just because I've got numbers on here, there you go. Here's the result. One's failed, already a grading string, skipping, which was that one there, which is great. Let's click OK. And that's it. They're literally all created. So it's just a case of I've got all my grading strings listed. Obviously, there are alignments there as well, but I've now got them listed here under grading strings. Again, not necessarily something I would always promote. A lot of people, I do find, you open up your data sets and I can see for every single grading string, the create surface option has been left on. Okay. Strongly recommend always have it turned off. And then if you do need a surface afterwards, because ultimately the processing of lots and lots of different surfaces, particularly with grading strings and the sampling, can potentially have an impact on your processing and performance. Okay. Now on this job, it's not really going to be an issue. But if you are finding that there are potentially you're struggling with a bit of performance, you can either go into Surface Manager, delete the surface, open up the grading string form and uncheck the no surface creation box. Or there is actually another option which we released, and I forget which version we did it in. Under grading strings, in Toolspace, grading string manager. Now, because grading strings are drawn on total model, generally, if you, for example, open up the VG, for example, for this road, close down the vertical grading editor, as soon as you close the vertical grading, or to be honest with you, even if you make an edit, everything is being processed and updated in the background. This grading string manager basically stops that from happening. So you'd have to basically run a rebuild all models to go ahead and update them. But it reduces the processing required for lots of grading strings in a project. So it's worth noting that, if I didn't want all of these grading strings here to update, I could toggle off and have those not being updated within the project. So very, very useful. But every single one of these grading strings is now entirely editable. It's completely independent. As you can see, there's one over here. I'm able to edit, select all the usual tools. I've now got myself a great starting point to work with this particular tool. Again, I will just pause there, just ask Shane, see if we've got any comments, questions come in, or we move on to quick section.
Jonathan, an interesting question that's come in is just whether or not we can rename those grading strings afterwards.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I'm just going to, sorry, were you going to answer that or would you like me to?
You may answer.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, as I said, they're no different to any other grading stream. So if I call this pad design, click create update, you can see it's a slightly slower process now, folks, because of the fact I've now got multiple grading streams in this project. But if we now head down, there's pad design. As I said, it's a shortcut. There's nothing in here which you can't already do with a grading string. There are some extra benefits of running this at the front end, particularly I think with the level setup. But everything else is exactly the same. The grading string you're presented with is exactly the same at the end, subject to the same tools. Any other questions, Shane, or is that it?
No, I think you're good to go.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Well, look, we are going to use this wonderful polyline, which we've got annoyingly in the drawing, which we nearly used for a grading. And look, the purpose of this polyline being of that width is what I normally do with a lot of webinars is put it at width where everyone can see it, and it's not sitting there in the background and people are wondering what that line is. So I'm going to be using this polyline as a basis for the quick section tool. What I'm going to do very quickly, though, is run to models, edit my model builder model, and throw in. Do you know what? We might just grab the majority of these and see what we get. Let's try the right box. There we go. If you haven't used Model Builder before, or you're wondering what this is, have a look at the Model Builder 101 webinar. Strongly recommend that you have a look at it, because what this does is enables me to combine the line work of all of my different strings that I've created and put them in one finished model. Okay. Funnily enough, the one that I wanted isn't even there. So let's just grab all of these. I'm not going to turn them all on. I don't need them. So I'm just after these where I'm cutting through. I'm going to just click build and save. But yeah, have a look at our webinars and go for the Model Builder 101, which is one of our most popular webinars. So quick section lives in a couple of places. Firstly, on the roads tab, analysis panel, which is brand new, which means there's been a bit of reconfiguration going on with the other panels. Quick section pull down, the inquiry tool is actually sitting in there. And again, if you don't know about that one, strongly recommend you open that up, have a look at it. Quick section. I was actually going to run this from the tool space. Sitting under here at the very bottom for the tool space users, quick section. Now this is just an independent form, modeless form, just like we have with the VGE. You'll be prompted to select a polyline. So I'm going to go and select a polyline. What it will do by default, it'll actually look at everything I've done on this polyline before and opened up quick section. So do you know what? I'm going to do the right thing here. I'm going to draw a new polyline. So essentially everything that I do with quick section is stashed within that polyline. If I delete it, I mean, I've effectively lost all the settings that I made in there, but it's all about checkboxes. I'm going to run this again. Great bit of layer control there. Give the thing a width, old school, 0.5. There we go. And we'll use this polyline. So we'll run quick section. Select polyline. And pretty much this is what you get from scratch. Okay. So what it's doing is it's looking at the direction of the polyline. And if we move our mouse in this environment, you can hopefully see the direction is probably actually not what I want. I actually want 0 to be at the bottom of the screen. Just for continuity, I'm actually going to just show you how this works. Just using the grips. Watch what I can do here whilst it's in edit mode. So moving the polyline around whilst you've got the form open automatically updates. The other cool thing is I can actually add grips in. So I go add vertex. Let's just move it over here. I can immediately get an update. Just a word of about the grips. Your polyline, we don't support arcs. Okay. So don't pop in a fillet or pick a polyline that's already got an arc in it, because the arc isn't actually supported by this viewer. And it's taking sections along the tangents of your polyline only. Okay, so we don't support arcs. In respect of what's going on inside this view, let's just move things over, maybe make this a fraction bigger. Navigating in here is dead easy. Just again, scrolling, holding down your mouse wheel and double clicking your mouse wheel to zoom extents. There is a refresh button, and I'll show you how that works in a minute, because you can actually go and make design changes while this form's open and see those being implemented. By default, we just show you your total model. Now, it's important that you understand the difference between what total model is and, for example, what we're calling design base. Now, when I check on design base, you're probably not going to see any difference at all. Total model is picking up all strings and codes that are drawn on total model, which is why just here, look, and you see centline and batter on total model. So you want to get away from the fact that you're thinking, well, yeah, total model is just my road. It is not just your road. It's all pretty much all strings, all objects. Grading strings are drawn inside total model. So in this instance, it could be that actually seeing the grading strings in here isn't particularly helpful. Okay, so I could go ahead and build another model using Model Builder and just include the roads only. Okay, because I don't want to see these and then display that model sitting in here. By default, we also show you your surfaces. There is a difference between a surface and a model. In fact, if I click on, there we go, total model. That is the surface of total model as it would look as you are slicing through it. So obviously through here, that all matches up nice and neatly. But as far as the surface goes, it terminates up here and then progresses all the way through. So one thing that I don't want users to sort of think is that there's maybe an issue here is that the difference between a surface and a model is that the model is picking up the line work, the grade, or basically the breaks on the line work, okay, of your model, the codes, centline, batter, boundary, footpath. The surface option is picking up the triangulation of that surface. So wherever there's a grade break along that surface, this is probably not the best example. Probably find another one up here. Design base, let's try that. You'll actually see a difference. In fact, you can actually see it through there. Look, let's turn off the total model. So that's total model as if it was going from one code to the other. Remember, a model is picking up the string line work, connecting them together. A surface is picking up the grade breaks. So when I first opened this, I was like, oh no, it's not right. Why are they different? They are going to be different. One is a surface, one is model line work. So I just want to make that clear straight off the bat. Okay. You can also adopt your submodels. I'm going to turn that on now and then turn it off again because it requires a little bit more processing, but it's perfectly fine to have in this. In actual fact, in combination with the pipes, I have to say it works really, really well. You can also show your alignment. So let's just cut through here. Alignments and profiles is a bit like when you use the cross-section viewer and you get it to show the position of an alignment with a blue line. This is sort of similar. Let's just go and grab row 1. So there's row 1. As you can see, it's cutting through at the bottom. And what it will do is it will pick up an RL for you at the center line of row 1 and then display that for you with this little marker. Now, I'll talk to you about the visual controls in a second because there is some controls to enable you to change how this looks. I guess on that point, you can simply click the color swatch, as you can see here for the NS. Maybe I'll make that bright green very quickly, just so you can change the view and see what it is that you're after. Okay, now I don't suppose that was, what did I just do there? Did that change? There we go. So I've now got the NS being displayed different color. Okay, colors aren't particularly important for us right now. What it is that we want to see is maybe our pipe work, line work. Now, the network in here, these are in order of creation. Okay, so it's just important that you note that the network naming doesn't necessarily correlate to the network naming that you've been using, but it's just in order of creation. So you just really have to keep your eyes on this as to what it is you've created and what it is that you're cutting through. But it's pretty obvious at the end of the day in regards to location. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to pick, let's just go with magenta, click OK, and show network 1. And what that'll do is it'll pick up for me the pipe. So the RL is actually the middle of the pipe that it's referring to, but it's kind of nice to be able to see, okay, so that pipe is well and truly outside the design. Coming down here, okay, yeah, again, that pipe is, reasonably deep compared to the subgrade here. I'm pretty happy with that. Just from a visual perspective, just being able to see that is quite helpful. The other thing is that as you make design changes, so for example, if I go up to here, go pipes, open the VGE, and let's go and change the pipe at the end here. So this is the pipe, this point down here at the end. Let's go and change this from this point onwards. We'll just significantly make the pipe bigger. That's all we're going to do. I'm going to make this a 750. Maybe make this a 750 just to show you what it is that it's looking to do. So 750 pipe, close that down. Then if we hit refresh, what we should find is that the pipe will automatically update. Just waiting just 1 second for this to kick again. That's where I was talking about the subgrade. Sometimes the subgrade models, which are incredibly detailed, can take a little bit more time out of that processing. So I'm actually going to uncheck the subgrade model so we don't actually see it. But there is that pipe now being displayed, which can be helpful. But to be honest with you, seeing it in concept in context to the subgrade was probably more helpful. The cool thing is that, look, if I decide, well, I don't want to have to sort of lose these settings, I'm just going to move this polyline over here and move it over to this point. You can see I've got a service crossing, which is just over here. If I check that network 2 on, that is another kind of handy tool, really, because normally trying to determine level difference, even visually, you're looking at model viewer using the inquiry tool, which we spoke about earlier, to determine level differences. Just having a quick visual guide as to where your pipes sit in relation to each other and those center RLs can be a quick way of being able to determine where your pipes are in relationship to each other. Now, we do have the option of adding in your point groups and your survey strings. I might come back to this because at the moment I don't have any COGO points, Civil Site Design COGO points to show you until I've done the high-low, and then that's kind of a nice segue to show you how you can show those COGO points in this window view as well. In relation to the, and you can see, look, there we go, plugging straight through my basin now because I've moved that polyline. In relation to the view settings, we click on settings. We've got just a number of sort of standard controls. You can change the text heights, the surface, the models, the pipes. Again, all of the visuals you can see in here, it's all fairly intuitive. Even the grid, and obviously deciding how you're going to change the view of that grid if you want to. Okay. My personal preference is to sometimes set this vertical scale to 1, so I get a real sense of what's going on. But if you decide that you want to change the scale, you can set that in there. Anything you do in here can then be set as default. Okay, so every time you open up this form, all of these settings within here, not within here, within the actual toggles, are going to be your defaults. And if you want them to be set back to how they were with the original installation, you can use reset defaults if you want to. The last part of this is to show you what you can deliver from this, which is a very basic but actually kind of handy CAD section. So if we click Draw CAD section, just jump ourselves into the drawing, move over, left click. This is a static one-off drawing of that section for you, which you can, to testify how static it is, it's all on layer 0. But it does mean that you've got a drawn version of whatever it is you're cutting through. So, for example, if you wanted to maybe move that over somewhere else, let that update just 1 second, draw CAD section, jump out, left click, bottom left-hand corner. I've now got a section. Hence why maybe even the one-to-one vertical exaggeration may be more helpful. Okay, that is all I've got to show you on quick section. It was a quick section on quick section. So Shane, I might just see if there's any questions that have arisen after showing that.
Jonathan, there's lots of excited people on this. There's been some really good questions, but in general, what people are asking for is to show more things, cut and fill depths to be labeled, things like that. So no questions that you need to answer.
Cool, no problem. Lovely. Well, look, we'll jump into the last part, which is to review the high-low points. But yeah, feedback on this. I mean, this is the first iteration of this, but feedback will be really valuable to us to know what it is that people get out of this particular tool, where they get real value, and obviously where it can be improved. Okay, so let's have a look at high-low points. Now, underneath the model builder pull down on the roads tab, we've got add high-low points, and found on the, as he furiously closes all of these little tabs, under models, when you right click on models in tool space, show high, low points. How does this work? Well, it's there to help identify where you have high or low points on your codes found within your strings, found within your models. The best case that I can sort of use in this scenario to show you is on curve returns. Now, I can clearly see here and here in the drawing that there are low points. Okay, I can see that, and I could probably identify in the VG exactly where they are. However, this tool is kind of helpful because it does an holistic check over your whole job. So when you look at total model, remember you're looking at any string that includes any of these codes, hence why we've got a count of 79 center lines in this job. That includes your grading strings. If you have no grading strings, you probably still have some profile strings. They will still be included in total model. So this is really where Model Builder is going to be your friend. So if you've got one road on your project or one string on your project, which you're really working on, hard to identify, we've got high and low points, I would just really at the moment just recommend creating a model builder model that just includes that string only. Okay. And in actual fact, that's what I've done with the curve returns. I've got model builder linked to auto model and just unchecked all the roads. Okay. So it's curve returns only. When you pick that, it then shows you all of the codes that it's found on all of the strings within this project. So wherever I've got a curve return currently, remember this won't update. Model Builder doesn't simply just append more curve returns. I'd have to go in and add them. Currently, I'm looking for the left invert code. They're all going to be counterclockwise, which means the invert code's on my left. There's no right invert code on a curve return in Australia. So this is the code that I want to assess on all curve returns in the project. So the easiest way to check just the invert code is for me, just using, as if you're using Excel, use Shift or Control to select everything, then left click on the tick, not on the cell, on the tick, left click out, and then just check the one that you want. It's just a bit quicker to manage. Now, there's a whole sort of section underneath here about creating civil site design COGO points. And my experience so far is that really I'm not interested in getting involved with code set tables and bits and pieces. I just want an object that helps me identify where there are low points. It happens to be this object. I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it. Don't worry about point style. By default, normally what it'll show is a point number, a Z, and a description. Okay, if you maybe want to try some of the others, you are more than welcome to. Okay, but just use the default to see what you get. Code set table, not going to be talking about code set table because these codes are literally for the purposes of identifying low points only. This is the critical part though for me. I would always put for the code LOW. Okay. The reason for that is because it'll actually show LOW on the COGO point in the drawing, which means that it's quite clear that that is a low point. We'll talk about how you can manage the COGOs in a second, but I would strongly recommend you do not use low and high, particularly if you leave that as low. But also, even if you left it by default, try to identify which one is high and which one is low if they're both using the same style and they're both using the same code is actually quite difficult. So I would strongly recommend that you go low, or if you are doing high, type in high. Okay, and you'll see how that comes out in a minute. The tolerance is actually quite clever. What this means is that it's going to, in fact, it's probably easier to talk to when I've created, but it's essentially going to go through all of your sections on a curve return, which by default are every 1 meter, typically when you build a curve return. It will look for a level difference between them. And if there is a level difference less than this number, it will not flag it as a low point. So that number is absolutely tiny, okay? The sort of the worst case scenario on these curve returns, I think it gets up to 11 mil. So if I put this up to 12 mil, these curve returns won't get flagged, okay? Because it's less than 12 mil, doesn't want to flag it. So anything below this very small number gets ignored. Anything above, yep, potentially a low point. Let's run process and see what it does. Since it's created 4, we're going to click OK and then click on close. As soon as you click close, they will appear in the drawing. So until you click it, you won't see anything happen. If I just left click on this and run select similar, these are static COGO points. they will remain there. And if you run this command again and type in low and run low, it will create another load of Kogo points using the next available number with the word low. So these will not update or change in any way. But what it has given me is an identifying point round that, particularly this one here. In fact, if we have a look at this curve return just using tool space here, we're looking at row 2, 3, this one here. Right click, vertical gradient editor. Yeah, okay, that's pretty clear, isn't it? There's my low point. So look, I mean, it could be that you are someone that opens up the VG and works through their curve returns and begins to move things around. If you're using the auto design, what tends to happen is obviously your curve returns automatically adjust as you're changing your row design. So if they are changing as you make changes to your row design, you may not be aware that you have maybe incorporated a low point into a curve return. Doesn't obviously have to be a curve return, folks. Any string you can assess. I just happen to have picked a model which includes only curve returns and only assess the left invert. So in regards to these points, if you want to manage them, be honest with you, the easiest way to manage them, because they are static, is to hit the delete key if you want to get rid of them. If you want to get rid of a large number of them, let's just say you've got a couple of hundred being created, and that could be deliberate. You can always use select similar and delete them. I would strongly recommend that you head to point groups in Civil Site Design tool space here, right click on point groups, click point groups, and what you'll find is that all of your points, if we go all points here, are listed in this window. Okay, so and again, that description is helpful because it helps me identify which ones are the low points, which ones are the high points. You could go one step further. You could call it low point KR or something and create a different code so you can really come into this form and begin to delve into which ones is which. The reason for this is because simply you can use Shift, Options, and then you can delete selected. Okay, it actually works a little bit better than simply deleting them manually in the drawing. So you've always got this option if you want to. That is high-low points. And by the way, just in case you're wondering, if this is a good example. Prince's Highway, this road string here is very, very flat, and then has a very, very large vertical curve. It's unlikely the high point part of that process would pick this up. So if you've got very, very large vertical curves and extremely fleet grades coming in and out, just be aware that it may not always be able to pick them up just due to the scale that you're working at. But certainly for jobs like this, if I just show you on how it would look on road 2, just to show you what road 2 actually looks like. This is the because of the original NS, when it uses the auto profile, essentially the reference surface to get you kicked off. This is actually what you get by default on this job, which is utterly horrendous, but it's for me to work that out. If I head to models, set high-low, show high-low points, what I would now do is ensure that I do not pick centerline, come through here, select everything I don't want, which is pretty much that, go right invert, left invert. Obviously, there's a lot more. Bear in mind, I'm going to be duplicating over the top of my curve returns. I'm going to go LO. In fact, let's go high, shall we? Let's go high. High. Click process. 14 Kogo points. Click close. And there are the high points being picked up for us. It's kind of helpful. So even on the road now, quite clearly, and obviously in line with those contours, that's a helpful little tool. But I'm only working to the invert code. I think it's just much cleaner. Don't just obliterate your whole of total model or whatever model you're on. I think you'll end up with way too many Kogo points, but hopefully that's a nice little tool to finish off with. And on that, I might just see if we've got any other questions, Shane.
Thank you, Jonathan. None that I've found on. Oh, there is one. Says here, often we need to draw a section at critical points, and we'll be showing the invert level most commonly. So I guess an extension that we could consider in the future is identifying sections at those locations. There is a question, can these low points be generated from strings only rather than models?
Good question. Really good question.
Yeah. What I hadn't sort of pursued is, making a model from the VGE for a single string. Um, whether that would work.
No, because it won't build a model, it builds a surface. You mean the ARD?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, whether that would be listed.
No, only builds a
Yeah,
surface.
yeah. So you do need a model.
Yes.
They're pretty quick to make. Just
Oh, yeah,
again,
look, I'll do it
tick
now.
on what you want. Yeah.
Yeah, link to auto model, row one only. Apply boundary retraction just for good measure. Create new model. Include, exclude. I've just got everything here. Shift, turn off, build, save. And the good thing is it's going to just respond to your original design changes as well. Okay, so you can still go ahead and work as you would do normally. This model can essentially, I can turn off the line work, not interested in seeing the line work, but it'll just update in the background, which means that I can then run my high-low points, pick that model called Road 1 only, and I'll only get Kogos added to the Road 1 design. But you can see, I mean, within the space of 30 seconds, you can have that built.
Excellent. Look, there was a question back in the quick section about multiple pipes and whether multiple pipes will show in the quick section,
Uh,
which is an open question because I haven't tried that.
that's a really good point. All right, let's just quickly test it then. We'll just head to pipes, open vertical grading editor. We'll head to here and we'll head to, well, where are we? Hang on. That pipe there, and we'll make that two. I think this will be similar to model viewer. I'm not sure that it will actually adopt the two pipes, but we'll just see what it does. Quick section. Select the polyline. The answer is dun, dun, dun. Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Interesting. There seems to be a level difference, but at the end of the day, I'm slicing through that at an oblique nature. So if I come through that perpendicular, I think I might lose my positioning here. Where are we? We're up here. There you go. So the
Yep.
answer is yes. Fantastic.
Brilliant. Tick, tick, tick.
Yes. Nice way to, yeah, nice way to finish. Is unless, of course, there's any other questions.
No, most of them I've answered directly. So they were the main questions. Just give me a moment while I scan through. Lots of questions have popped in, so let me just have a quick look.
No problem. Just while you're doing that, I might as well just ask, just can you use the raise hand if you've actually downloaded and installed version 26.2 on your computer? Just click the raise hand icon. It's a rough straw poll, but if you have done that, or if you've been okay, yeah, I've got a few of you. Yeah, okay, quite a small number, but that's okay. To be honest with you, that's very much to be expected. I can't actually lower the hands. I do not have the power to lower hands on this. So if you can lower hands, um, I guess the next question will be Shane, unless you've got a question to pop in.
No,
I was
nothing else has popped in.
Oh, okay. Well, look,
Thank you.
subject to now seeing this webinar, which you've all now done, who's intending on getting this installed on their computer? Just a raise hand. One person. Fantastic. So we'll just kidding.
Okay, just give it a second.
Yeah, I know. That's good.
What's exciting is the number goes up and then down.
It
So I'm
does as
not sure
people
whether
raise and then put
people are
their hand back
changing their
down.
minds or they've already told us the answer.
All right. Well, look, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Shane, for attending the Q&A there. That was very helpful. Chris will, I'm sure, be in the background. Someone's going to bring up the final slide just to tidy up and bookend this session. Obviously, thank you for attending. And if you want to see this recording, in fact, if you want to see any of the videos that have gone into V26.2, you will see this webinar sitting in there with an edit. Where 26.2 will be at the top, not 26, but it will be in our release playlist. You can actually find a V26 release playlist on the home screen. We have a Stringer Topo V26.2 webinar coming up next week. The next CSD or Stringer webinar after that, keep your eyes peeled onto the EDM because second week of March, Todd Brewster is going to be presenting a webinar on a roundabout design, independent string producing a roundabout design, which is going to be fantastic to get into. So second Thursday of March, roundabout design with Civil Site Design. We've then got the option for any webinar feedback. Please hang on just for a couple of seconds if you can when this webinar closes and just complete the webinar feedback survey for us. And if you're interested in getting notified about this webinar or our webinars going forward and you weren't notified, you can obviously sign up there. Chris, I might now hand up to you to close off.
Oh, thank you very much, Jonathan. An excellent session there. And can I just say my personal favorite highlight was the quick phrasing quick section on quick sections. That was wonderfully worded. Look, nothing really further for me to highlight there. Obviously, we've got the further webinars as Jonathan mentioned. Looking forward to seeing many more there. Thank you for hosting today, and to everyone who attended, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Shane. Cheers.